down. Inches to go. To Bader. 17 to 14. Cowboys out in front. Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneak, and he's into the touchdown, and the Packers are out in front. And the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions.
Set up for the Packers, and Favre back to throw his first one. Going deep. Has a man open. Andre Rison does the dance in, and Favre got settled down in a hurry.
That is the way to settle down.
Got hit there, 3rd and 1. Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, touchdown, Green Bay.
The title is back in town. The Green Bay Packers are world champions of football.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of the Title Town Lounge podcast. We're happy to have you back on another Victory Wednesday. I, of course, am your host, Rhino. I'm joined by my co-host, Brandon, and we are joined by a special guest by way of Fox Sports 1070 out of Madison, Mike Heller. Mikey, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right, Rhino. Doing good.
Thank you very much for having time to take out of your day for the podcast. We're going to jump right into it with the 49ers game, the victory on Sunday night. Now, this game stood out to me because I think the game was a lot more impressive than what the score indicated. It's the first time that I've seen in a long time where the Packers went on the road in a hostile environment to play a physical team. And instead of their normal dance around rope-a-dope victory, it was a very physical victory for the Packers. They went toe-to-toe with the 49ers on every side of the ball, special teams, defensive line, offensive line. What was the biggest thing you took away from this victory on Sunday night?
Well, I thought there were two things. One, the way they approached the offensive game plan in the concept that they went quick rhythm. They were going to have a makeshift offensive line, which looks better than I think many people expected. But they were also, Rodgers was getting rid of the ball in the under 2.5 second time frame. In the first quarter, he went 9 for 9, and all of those were essentially quick rhythm. I think on the night, in throws that he got off in less than 2.5 seconds, his numbers were as impressive as you can get. I think 16 of 18, 140 yards and a TD in under 2.5 seconds. So I love the scheme. I thought Matt LaFleur and Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, that three-headed offensive coordinator concept, they were really smart about how they went about their business. At times in the second half, Rodgers abandoned it on at least one series, and I thought it got close to coming back to bite them. And then the other, Rhino, I think you're dead on. I thought physically the defense was fast. They looked dynamic, and it wasn't just Jair Alexander that looked dynamic. Savage came up and made some big hits. I thought they played physical. And we've seen it many times in the past against this Niners team. Every team is different, but against Niners teams in the past where the Packers were out physicaled. And that wasn't the case on Sunday night. And I think that's a good sign. I said at halftime of the Lions game that I didn't think this Packers defense, from what I had seen, was good enough to get them to a Super Bowl. And I didn't know what could change. You know, you don't all of a sudden change your identity, but they kind of did on Sunday night. And I like that a lot.
And speaking of the defensive line performance, they sacked Garoppolo 4 times. They actually hit him 10 times, which is the most in any game of his entire career. And going back to that week 1 performance against the Saints, do you think that game was more of an anomaly, or are we starting to see what Joe Barry is actually capable of with this defense?
Yeah, well, so there's two parts to that, right? I think in the first half against the Lions game, they were still that same Saints defense, the defense we saw in game 1. And Matt LaFleur asserted his position. I don't know how that happened exactly, and none of us do. We don't know if LaFleur was angry at Joe Barry or if he simply said, listen, it's not working. You got to go get him. Put some pressure on the quarterback. Let's change up what we're doing. However it happened, at least on Sunday nights. So now for 5 out of the last 6 quarters, Green Bay's been a pretty good defense. And listen, I think you guys would probably agree with me. If this defense is pretty good, they can get to a Super Bowl. If they're not pretty good, if they're middle of the pack or below, they can't get there. Rodgers and the offense, that's too much to overcome So they have to be pretty good. What is pretty good? Top third of the league is pretty good. Top 10 is better than pretty good. And I think if you're top 10, you got a shot to go to the Super Bowl. And if you're in the middle, that's going to be iffy.
Mike, Brandon here. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Greatly appreciate it. Big fan of yours. When you're looking on that side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, it's safe to say that the Packers have put a lot of faith in those high draft picks. Jair Alexander and Rashawn Gary. Talk to me a little bit, in your opinion, the progression we're seeing with Rashawn Gary. Obviously, I just named him. He's stepped in for an injured Zadarius Smith. And then Darnell Savage is a guy that going into this year, there were high hopes for. He's coming up on that fourth year in the NFL. What are some of your things that you're seeing with the young defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, Brandon, first, thanks for what you said. Rhino is not a big fan of mine. So it's probably your right. So, I mean, to be honest about it. Let me go off the board on some of the guys you're talking about. I thought one of the difference makers on Sunday night was Kenny Clark. Because I thought he was unblockable up front. So that makes a difference. Now, isn't it funny how when you watch the game analysts and they're talking about Preston Smith and the great play he made early and Rashawn Gary makes another play, on both of them, it was offensive line mistakes on San Francisco. They were unblocked off the edge, either a bad line call or a quarterback not adjusting the line call, whatever that was. But to your point, like Darnell Savage played like he was shot out of a cannon on a couple of occasions. We haven't seen that. Listen, Adrian Amos is a good safety. He's clean. He knows what he's doing. He's not great. He's good. Darnell Savage, the other safety position, the guys that play on the back end there, they have to be dynamic at times, and we just haven't seen enough of it. So maybe Savage is making that step. And for all the Kevin King haters, him going in on the nickel slot and letting Stokes play on the outside. Stokes is going to have a couple of moments now because he's a rookie, right? He's going to have some of those moments where you're going, what was he doing there? How did he let that guy run by him? Why did he jump that out route on an out and up and, there's nobody within 15 yards? But Stokes can play, and King playing the slot is a whole lot better on the inside than he is on the outside. So there's a lot of moving parts back there, but at least for a game, we could see what this defense can be. And I also think that given what they'll see in the weeks to come, you get Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and the Bears and Washington all the way up in these next 5 games. It's a pretty good run. And they ought to be getting healthy in that time, because after that, they get Arizona and Kansas City and Seattle and Minnesota and LA. So you better get going right now. And maybe they found that rhythm. And those guys that you talked about, Savage and Rashawn Gary, I thought they had an awfully good night.
I was probably like most Packers Twitter and the dark web, as I like to call it. We're out for Joe Barry with our pitchforks after week 1, and I know it was the Lions. I said it on the podcast after we broke that game down. To shut out any team in a half of football at this level is impressive, and they really almost did it again against San Francisco. I think the referees handed San Francisco 7 points. Staying on that side of the ball, this is kind of a 2-part question for you, and I hate to hit you with this right away, but are we starting to kind of see what Joe Barry's trying to do? He's trying to free up a lot of those linebackers. And speaking about those linebackers, have the Packers struck gold with inside linebacker Devondre Campbell?
Yeah, they need to strike a little gold somewhere in there, don't they?
Finally.
And so maybe they have. But and again, when we get into deeper scheme stuff, it's where I pull back, because none of us, with all due respect, none of us know enough schematically about what it is they're doing all week to get ready. But to that point, Green Bay is bringing packages to get to the quarterback, and you got to get to Garoppolo, right? I mean, if you get to him, you're going to find him making mistakes. So get to him, and you can do that. And then what they're doing then on the outside is when they're bringing that pressure, is that it looks like they've come up to the line of scrimmage on the corners and go ahead and jam those receivers, make it harder to get off the line. I think that, many others, not just you and me in the dark web, but many others have looked at how they play off on receivers as an issue. right? I think a lot of us would love for them to be more aggressive on the edges, both on the line, blitz packages, and on your corners to come up and jam wide receivers, make them get off the line of scrimmage. Now you're going to play with some fire there, because when you jam, if you miss, you're in some significant trouble. But that also has to do with quarterbacks. So they see one in Roethlisberger who can adjust pretty good this week. Maybe Joe Burrow early in his career is starting to get good at that too. But you don't see it in Chicago the week after. You're not going to see it in Washington the week after that. And then it'll be interesting when you play Arizona and what Kyler Murray does running around. But yeah, listen, I love what we saw Sunday, what we saw in the second half against Detroit. It's a more aggressive version of this defense. Just remember that with aggression comes mistakes. So there's going to be some. And in the second half, San Francisco took advantages of some of those opportunities.
Mike, moving to the other side of the ball, and speaking of the dark web, after week one, that terrible performance by Rodgers against the Saints, everyone was saying Rodgers didn't look like he cared. He didn't have the energy. He didn't have the emotion. Fast forward 2 weeks, and we've seen him playing at his normal MVP level, just like he did last year. Do you think it was a hangover from the summer of drama with Rodgers in week one? What has changed from his week one performance to the last 2 weeks where he's been playing at lights out pretty much?
Yeah, honestly, this is probably an oversimplification, but I think their game plan was bad in game one against the Saints. The Saints in the past had not played too deep, right? Rodgers talked about a lot post-game. So when we play the Saints, they play a lot of press defense against us throughout the years. And I think the Saints outplanned the Packers in that opening game. Now, to the point about, whether Rodgers cared or not, I think there's just Rodgers comes off as aloof. I think he would at times agree from the media perspective. What he does publicly, he can come off as a little distant and hard to relate to at times. He's more relatable when he does the podcast on, with McAfee, because he's really relaxed. Now he's still a little, he's a different cat. But the non-care deal, I don't think that was ever in play. However, he left himself open for all of the second guessers.
Yeah.
Because of the offseason. No mini camp, no OTAs. Hadn't made up his mind 2 days before camp began whether he was going to retire or play. And then you come out and you play a really bad first game. Everybody's going to go there. And some of the character assassination, does he care? Does he not care? I don't know if that was fair, but I thought it was fair game because of the moment and because of the moments that we had all just lived through. You put chip on that dude's shoulder, and he is one of the most dangerous men that's ever played the game. How long will it last? That was, I think, a pretty good San Francisco team, but we'll find out down the road if it's a good defense or not. I thought the Packers' game plan was excellent. It just wasn't against the New Orleans Saints in week one. And they're going to get tested. Listen, this schedule, and you get to the back half of the year, is much more daunting than what we're going to see the next 5 weeks. We thought Pittsburgh might be I don't think they will be. Cincinnati their record is good. I don't think they're great. The Bears they're a mess. Then you get Washington, and they're just a good defense, but very average. Then it beefs up. So I'm really curious to see what we get starting the last Sunday in October and then through November and early December when it's pretty meaty, the schedule.
And speaking of that offensive game plan, and we were talking about Rodgers with the quick release especially in the first half, he actually had the quickest average release time of 2.05 seconds since 2011. Do you think they're implementing this particular game plan to try and combat that Tampa 2, that cover 2 defense that he's been struggling with over the last few years?
Yeah, I think so. That Devontae Adams, you can't guard him. It's a basketball term. Can't guard him on the quick release. He's as good off the line of scrimmage with his moves in the first 2 to 3 steps as anybody that's in the league right now. So if you can do that, like I was looking, there were 6 targets in the game. So what does Rodgers throw? 33 balls in a game. He targets Adams 18 times. 6 other wide receiver targets. Now, that's a really interesting concept because, MVS is pretty dangerous. Lazard had 1 target. It was good, but just 1 target. Nothing. 1 target, I think, to Cobb too. But you're gonna have to diversify a little bit. But until somebody stops Devontae Adams and that quick rhythm, I think we're going to see adjustments by other teams. They're going to look at it and go, okay, he picked apart Detroit. He picked apart San Francisco. If he does the same playing Tampa 2 again this Sunday against Pittsburgh or whatever variation, however they play him defensively, this league is about week-to-week adjustments. Everybody talks about halftime adjustments. Halftime adjustments happen, but they're in that locker room for about 7 minutes. It's a 15-minute halftime. By the time they're in there talking about adjustments, they got about 7 minutes. I think that the week-to-week adjustments are much bigger in Green Bay, and good offenses find ways to make an adjustment from last week to this. They're guessing a little bit at what Pittsburgh does, but they have a second package. If Pittsburgh starts to show this early, they've got some variations. I'll be interested to see, even though I don't know all the schemes, how they vary. Because if you do something good a couple of weeks in a row, the next defense is not going to play the same way.
Looking at that coaching staff, looking at the adjustments, Mike, that you kind of mentioned, I've been on this show on numerous occasions and have said publicly that Matt LaFleur doesn't get the credit that he should get. I know when in the larger media market world and non-Packer fans and really some Packer fans, they say the credit is because of Aaron Rodgers. I think people really do forget, Mike, that Aaron Rodgers' career wasn't headed in the right direction as far as numbers wise before Matt LaFleur got there, obviously with the Mike McCarthy tenure ending abruptly in December of 2018. What are your opinions about Matt LaFleur? He seems to have a little bit more of an edge to him this year. He loves throwing that challenge flag at the feet of the referees when he's super mad. I mean, you look at it, Aaron Rodgers, first year progression, second year an MVP. Aaron Jones has a career year. Devontae Adams, who didn't play all year, has a career year. Guys are having career years on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't think he gets enough credit. What are your thoughts on Matt LaFleur as a head coach?
Yeah. So look at the hierarchy if we're going to be fair about this. Look what Holmgren did with Mikowski and then Favre, right? The game changed, right? So then when Holmgren leaves, you go through a few coaches and Favre gets pretty stale. McCarthy came in and McCarthy rejuvenated Brett Favre, and he got Aaron Rodgers off to a very good start. Then McCarthy got stale, and that one extra trip to the NFC Championship game probably cost Green Bay an extra year with McCarthy that in retrospect maybe they shouldn't have had. So then you bring in LaFleur. And to your point, Brandon, I'm a big LaFleur fan despite not knowing much about him before he got here. But we could say the same thing about Mike Holmgren. Didn't know much about him. He had come from San Francisco, but he was never the OC, even if, and I don't remember if he had that title, but Bill Walsh and George Seifert were the architects. And then we didn't know really anything about McCarthy, and we didn't know much about LaFleur. And when he was the OC, they didn't have a whole lot of success in Tennessee, did they? But to that point, to your point, they reestablished the ground game and the commitment to it. And he has reined Aaron back in and given him another life. Because prior to that, Aaron had, was really needed McCarthy gone. And the first year, I think Aaron was in a feel-out process with Matt LaFleur. That's what it looked like from the outside, and wasn't fully bought in, and maybe he started to buy in later. But that first offseason, now last year was, boy, they're simpatico. I mean, they're hand in glove. They're working together perfectly, and I think we can see that right now. I don't have any doubt that Aaron loves playing for Matt LaFleur. Right. And I think LaFleur loves Aaron as quarterback. Why wouldn't you? If you're bought in. And he's bought in right now. And so that front office crap, we're through it for now. It'll raise its ugly head if the season goes south or when the season ends. But for now, it's all about the quarterback coach, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback. Right. There's 4 guys there. Getsy and Hackett and LaFleur and Rodgers. And they're in. They're together. This is pretty damn good. And LaFleur deserves a ton of that credit because Sunday night was about LaFleur. And I know that Hackett and Getsy and Rodgers are all part of it too. But Sunday night was a LaFleur win, and he wanted that bad. There's a falling out between he and Shanahan. You want to talk about chips on shoulders? Rodgers has it, but on Sunday, Matt LaFleur was fired up to take on Shanahan and to beat him. He almost screwed it up, but that win felt awfully good for the head coach, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that was that midfield handshake was ice.
Yeah, cold.
Ice cold.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was like a Bill
cold.
Belichick handshake almost.
Yeah, that was
that was Bo Ryan and Tom Crean. Bo Ryan and Tom Crean walking by at the full center midcourt. Yeah.
Walking by. Now, when you're looking offensive side of the ball, Packers are pretty much, they're set. They're starting to get into rhythm, and Aaron Rodgers was playing in rhythm and within the scheme. You want him to see distribute the ball probably a little bit more throughout the offense. But flipping on the other side of the ball, I'm a big Rashawn Gary fan. Raw product coming out of Michigan, a super freak athlete. Your thoughts where Zadarius Smith is going now? He's coming up to that week 3 IR designation. I really don't. I'm really confused, Mike, with this injury. Like, did it happen in the offseason? We've been told it's not a contract related thing. I don't think Zadarius would ever do that. We've seen him. He's very upset about not being selected as a captain, via his Instagram and whatever else, Twitter, wherever else he's at. Your thoughts on Zadarius Smith? Is he going to come back? Are we going to see Z back healthy? I am a person that unfortunately deals with a bad back, and once you have one, I've never met anybody that says my back used to be bad. It stays that way. Yeah. So your thoughts on the Zadarius Smith dilemma, I guess we could say.
Well, I think he's really important to what this team can do. You add him on the field, and you got Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith and Rashawn Gary. To your point, I think Gary's playing at a higher level. You got 3 guys playing at a higher level. You get some rotation in there, and then you can run fresh bodies. Gary's out, the other 2 are in. One was out, the other 2 are in. So you can be fresher and more dynamic. Rashawn Gary's playing too many snaps. And you're 3 games into a 17-game deal. So they need Zadarius Smith. None of us are going to know what his health really is until we see him back or we don't see him back. So there's a lot of guesswork from the outside going in. But I know this, he's a really valuable piece. If the Packers are going to play deep into January and play that second Sunday in February, he needs to be on the field. It makes it far more attainable if Zadarius is part of this defense.
Mike, we'll move on to the Steelers game quickly, and then we can get you out of here. The Steelers have a very good offense. I mean, Big Ben is still Big Ben. I know he's a fraction of his former self. He's still a Hall of Fame quarterback. He still has the brains. He may not have the physical talent that he used to. And they do have some pretty decent weapons. They have the Alabama running back. They have Chase Claypool. They do have Juju Smith-Schuster. What do you think the Packers need to continue doing or do differently on defense in order to tame that Pittsburgh offense?
Yeah, I mean, here's a simple version of it. If they play with their hair on fire like they did Sunday against San Francisco, they'll be fine. But they did not play with that energy in week 1. Nobody knows why. It's hard to figure that out. This is a week-to-week league. But if they have that energy that they played with on Sunday night, they'll be fine against the Steelers. I don't think the Steelers are a great offense. I agree. Ben's done it. He knows what to do. I think now sometimes his body just won't do what he knows it needs to do. He's an older quarterback, right? And that's going to happen not to Brady and apparently not to Rodgers, but some older quarterbacks, you see that drop off. Well, I think we're seeing that with him. Physically, he can't hold up at times. But it's still a dangerous team. Mike Tomlin is an emotional coach. And if the Steelers, conversely, about the Packers playing with their hair on fire, if the Steelers play with that energy, they can beat anybody. So, it's week to week. It's why gambling is so hard in this league. You never know which team is going to show up, right? So the Steelers can play. I think Green Bay is better than Pittsburgh is. But what's the energy you come to the stadium with and go out onto the field with? You never quite know what that's going to be with most any team. So we'll see how that part plays. But Roethlisberger this offense there's some weapons there. Chase Claypool is really dangerous. Juju Smith-Schuster, they get 2 fantastic receivers, pretty good running game, and a quarterback that has done it a lot of times. So I'm interested. I'm going as a fan on Sunday, which I don't do very often. So I'll look forward
You're
to it.
going to be at the
I'll have
game?
to watch it again. Yeah, I'll have to watch it again Monday morning because I'm sure there are going to be many parts of it that I don't see well enough.
Brandon and I are going to be at the game.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we're going to have to meet up for a beer.
Well,
Brandon,
yeah,
do you have any?
I have to rewatch the game Monday.
Brandon, do you have any final questions for Mikey before we get his prediction?
I could ask him about 100 questions surrounding my Wisconsin Badgers, but we only have so much time, so we'll pray that.
Well, here, yeah. Hey, listen, they're going to win. Wisconsin will win on Saturday. How's that? I don't think you need. They've won 5 in a row against Michigan. The season hangs in the balance, and I think that they'll answer the bell.
No, Mike, I'm with you. I hope they do. I greatly appreciate your time jumping on here, talking some Packers, and I know we love having you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mikey. Well, hopefully we see you rolling around up in Green Bay. Oh, very quickly. How about a prediction for the game?
Yeah, I think Green Bay wins 34-20. So
solid
I think
prediction.
It's a 2-touchdown. I think it's a 2-touchdown win. I think the offense is just too good right now. And I don't know. Do we know anything? We don't know anything yet about TJ Watt. If Watt plays and he's ready to go, it makes it a little bit different.
He was limited. He was limited today, and Elton Jenkins was not a participant. So something to kind of key match.
MVS
obviously.
didn't work today either, right?
Correct.
On Wednesday,
he was
MVS did not work. Yep. So yeah. All right, boys.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Mike. We greatly appreciate your time.
Yeah, you bet. Anytime. All right. See you guys.
Later.
Thank you. All right. That was Mike Heller, Fox Sports 1070 out of Madison, Wisconsin. We do greatly appreciate his time. We'll touch back to the Niners game just very briefly. I'd like to do our studs and duds segment here. Brandon, go ahead and kick us off with who you think the stud of the game was.
Stud of the game. I'm going to go, Devontae Adams is a good one. You could go that route. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers getting thrown into the 37-second comeback. I'm going to go with Yosh Nijman. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. When we were told that Yosh was going to be the starting left tackle against Nick Bosa, you can be the biggest Packer fan in the world. You could be the most homer Packer fan in the world, and you would still be like,
Actually, I'm pretty sure I was the one that said if Elgin didn't start, they lost. I'm pretty sure I said that last week.
And you would have been more times than not, Rhino, probably right. Nick Bosa didn't have a sack or a pressure.
Yeah.
So I got to go with my guy Yosh, thrown into the fire, which is interesting how he became the starter. Mike Stenavich, the offensive Adam Stenavich, not Mike. I'm thinking of Mike Smith. Adam Stenavich, the offensive line coach, actually asked Aaron Rodgers who he preferred at left tackle, and Aaron Rodgers named Yosh. And I got to give it up to him just to step into that environment with that front seven, play pitcher perfect, no false starts, nothing on him. I think he had one face mask penalty, but those refs were awful. But so I'm going to give it up to Yosh.
Yosh, that's a very solid choice. My stud of the game is actually going to go on the defensive side of the ball. I got to go Devondre Campbell. I think we are seeing what Joe Barry is best at. Mm-hmm. And one of the crutches of this Green Bay Packers defense for years now has been inside linebacker pass coverage. Well, we saw him in pass coverage almost the entire game against the 49ers, and I believe it was only was it two passes he allowed for 23 yards. He also had 2 pass defenses. And his open field tackling is phenomenal. This guy is making a name for himself in Green Bay. He played 4 years in Atlanta, had a cup of coffee in Arizona. He never really had a outstanding season, I guess you could call it. He's well on his way to a potential Pro Bowl season. And this is something that we saw Joe Barry do in Los Angeles with middle of the pack guys that all of a sudden started playing at a Pro Bowl level because of his defensive presence. I would like to give Joe Barry credit for the development we've seen in Devondre Campbell so far this year.
Yeah. And, your dad pops on here and says Tunyon made some key blocks on offense. That's his pick. Yeah. Real quick to get onto that point. I'm a little concerned with Robert Tunyon's targets. It's just for a guy that led the NFL in touchdowns last year. And I know we're a couple weeks into it. And we're getting way off topic, but I don't know.
He did start off pretty slow last year, though. I think we're seeing, and I think Mike touched on it pretty well earlier when he said the game-to-game adjustments.
It is, yeah.
I mean, we saw a pretty good adjustment from week 1 to week 2, and then I would like to think the adjustment we saw from week 2 to week 3 was even better because they were playing a much better team. They were playing a much more physical team.
It was on a short week. Yeah,
I think we will eventually see Robert Tonyan included in the offense a lot more than what he is now. So I think it's just early. It's through 3 games.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think I'm not overly concerned about it, but seeing him not really have a whole lot of targets like whatsoever. And I know that's, Davante Adams is getting, 20 targets a game, it feels like, which is fine. If they're going to give that, that's fine. But this offense is almost, I don't want to say unstoppable. It's kind of a wrong term to use, but it really is super good when you involve everybody in that offense because it's, who do you cover? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there is no way to shut. You're going to shade a safety over Davante Adams. You're going to have an open receiver, a one-on-one receiver, slot receiver, MVS. A linebacker is going to be on one of them. It's game over.
Or even Aaron Jones as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We'll move on to the duds of the week, and then we'll start talking about Pittsburgh Steelers. Who do you have for the dud of the week?
So I said this in the pre-show. I'm going to be honest with you, Rhino. And if anybody that watches or listens, I'll call it kind of how I see it. There is a little bit of homer to me. I don't think anybody played really bad. I really don't. I really don't. Yeah. It was hard, but then it wasn't hard for me because I'm not the type of player or person, to blame, outside of the game, influences. But the referee on Sunday, the referee group, Jerome Booger, was absolutely horrid. It was absolutely terrible. You're talking about the non-call on Davante Adams that seemingly knocked him out. He was laying limp on the field. The roughing the passer on Jair Alexander, he didn't do anything. Eric Stokes PI, the guy Brandon Ayuk was falling down. I mean, the non-call of the intentional grounding before half that basically handed San Francisco 7 points and completely flipped the momentum. They were
roughing
just
the passer call.
They were just awful. I mean, absolutely awful. And it became a point in that game, Rhino, where I'm sitting there watching like, there's nothing Green Bay can do. There's just not. You got 3rd and 15. Eric Stokes makes a play on the ball. Brandon Ayuk falls down and he gets a pass interference. First down at the 50-yard line. And I know Green Bay got the ball back because Jimmy Garoppolo threw it backwards and it was a fumble. But it was really, really bad. It was one-sided too. It was one-sided. And I know, non-Packer fans will be like, no, it's always, Packers get every call or whatever. Watch that game again and tell me the Packers get every call. It was that bad.
And Jimmy Garoppolo had the audacity to call that a questionable call, his fumble. The man literally turned around. He did a 180 and threw it backwards, and you're going to call that questionable? No. Give me a break. I mean, the only player that really stood out to me that you could have even remotely given the dud to was Ty Summers, but he didn't really play a whole lot. I think he only played about maybe 15 snaps. He did give up some crucial passing plays, but outside of that, I don't think he played enough to really call him a dud. I'm right there with you. I'm going to give it right to the refs as well. I mean, those 2 Eric Stokes pass interference calls were both questionable. Was it Jair that had the roughing the passer?
Yeah, and he didn't.
He barely touched him.
He didn't do anything. Yeah, I
don't
know.
He barely touched him. To be honest with you, I think Jimmy sold that more than Jair hit him. The most egregious one, and you called it, the most egregious one was the Davante Adams hit. And we were talking about this pre-show. The crown of the defender's helmet goes right into the face mask of Davante. Now, when it comes to what actually was his ailment, I think he took the brunt force of the shoulder pad into his chest. And so I think that actually, that probably was the injury. I think he passed concussion protocol properly. We talked about it. It was an independent doctor. So that's out of the question. But the fact remains, he led with his helmet, and his helmet made contact with a part of Davante Adams' helmet. And it's blatant from 4 different angles. I mean, I haven't seen a call that bad since the Fail Mary in 2012.
It was bad.
That's the worst call I've seen in a long time, the worst missed call that I've seen in a long time. So I'm giving my dud to the refs as well. I'm not sure, I'm not too familiar with this officiating crew that called that game Sunday night. I've only seen a couple of them. Whoever the head referee was, I'm not too familiar with his work, so I don't know if he has a track record.
Booger, he's horrible. He's been horrible.
Does he have a track record of making terrible calls like this?
Yeah, he does. It's awful. And now, well, here's the thing, Rhino. When you're talking about those, the Devontae Adams hit, every pass interference was kind of ticky-tack, right? Like there's some of them. The one called that Tunyon was you could argue, yeah, I guess. I mean, I was happy, but it was okay, I guess. But these are ticky-tack fouls, penalties. And then Ward, leads with the crown of his helmet into a receiver. Yeah. And you're not going to call that, but you're going to call this other stuff. Come on. I mean, it was just, it was crazy. At one point, you're just sitting back in your chair, wherever you're watching the game, and you're like, okay, there's nothing Green Bay can do. The defense played great. San Francisco was bailed out on 3 third down drives in which they got a penalty on 3rd and long.
Yeah. That's why I opened the show with it. The game was a lot more impressive than what the score indicated. It definitely should not have come down to a last second field goal. And speaking of last second field goals, this game, when they say the game it's a game of inches, they're not wrong, man.
No,
I mean, you're talking about a fingernail length difference between this going to the 49ers and the Packers losing. I mean, that I have never seen outside of the 49ers game where the playoff game where it went through, what was it, Morgan Burnett's arms in 2012.
Yep.
That's probably the closest.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the closest I've ever seen a defender come to not blocking a field goal. That was pretty crazy. But I mean, I really hope we get some cleaner officiating because I am excited to see what this offense can do against the Steelers. I think you're going to see a little bit more high powered like you did against the Lions. Their defense is just not what it used to be. This isn't your dad's Steelers. This is not your dad in particular, but this isn't your daddy's Steelers anymore.
This ain't the steel curtain. Yeah, that's for sure.
I think you're going to see a lot of movement on offense. So I just really hope we get a lot more clean officiating. With that being said, we can move on to the Steelers game. You ready for that?
Let's do it.
This is a big week for all of us here at the Title Town Lounge because yours truly and Brandon will be up at the game. So anyone listening, we will be hopping around. You can go ahead and hit us up on Twitter. We can stop, have a beer. Are we recording Saturday? You want to make that announcement?
Are we?
Do you want to record Saturday?
Well, tentatively, yeah, we could.
Tentatively, we'll see how the day goes. We'll play it by ear. But if you see us bouncing around, stop by and say hi. Moving on to the Steelers. What do you think? See, going into last week, I said that the thing that worried me the most was George Kittle.
Yeah.
And we held George Kittle in check. He did not have a monster game like he normally does against Green Bay. What is your biggest question mark going into this game on the offensive side of the Steelers?
Good question to start off with. Najee Harris. Easy.
Yeah.
Because I think he's the ignition to that offense. And we saw it in week 1 against Buffalo when they went into Orchard Park and beat Buffalo and they made Josh Allen look like he was 80 years old. So, and the way they did that was controlling the ball. They were keeping controlling the clock. They were keeping Josh Allen off the field. Najee Harris had a big game. And then it opens up, everything else for them downfield. Juju Smith-Schuster, although he was a non-participant at practice today, I think his status is still iffy, but I think he'll play. And then obviously Chase Claypool's an outstanding rookie year last year. But it all starts with the running game. And it's the same thing for the Packers. We all know when Aaron Jones is involved in the offense, if he touches the ball over 20 times, they're pretty darn good. And I think when you're looking at the Steelers, that's how they're going to have to win this game. And it starts with Najee Harris. Ben Roethlisberger, if you've watched any bit of the Steelers, that he's not going to go out and win you a shootout. Like he's just not. So how do you beat the Steelers? You turn them into one-dimensional, just like you did with the San Francisco 49ers. You're going to get opportunities to intercept the football. But when you're looking at the 49ers, that scares me on the offensive side of the ball. It's a guy like Najee Harris where we've seen Green Bay not be able to control that line of scrimmage. If they are unable, to shut him down or keep him, held down to, minus, plus or minus 60 yards, roughly around there. I think they have a good chance, but that's the one guy in the Steelers offense that concerns me.
I'm actually going to throw a bit of a wild card out there for who worries me the most. And we saw what he was capable against the Raiders in week 2, and that's Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
He did return today to practice. He was limited, but he is projected to start. Now, the one thing that is worrying me about this game, we are going to see a lot of 3 wide out of this Steelers team. They do have Najee Harris, of course, in the backfield. They don't have like a 2-headed running back monster like they have in years past. I think you're going to see a lot of 3 wide. Obviously, we know that Jair is going to take one of 2, Chase Claypool or Juju Smith-Schuster. Eric Stokes is probably going to take the other. The problem with Deontay Johnson is if he starts lighting you up in the first, second quarter, they bring Jair Alexander down to the slot to cover him, or they keep him on Deontay out wide. Who is that third back that's going to cover either Juju Smith-Schuster or Chase Claypool? Or vice versa, one of those combinations. Who's going to be that third cornerback that steps up and provides great coverage so that one of those 3 guys aren't lighting us up all game?
People joke and laugh and criticize Kevin King, and rightfully so. If Kevin King is in the slot, Rhino, there's not a whole lot of teams that have a better trio of cornerbacks than the Packers. And we can laugh about Kevin King and what he did in the NFC Championship game and what he did in week 1. And you're right. You're rightfully so. Keep in mind, Kevin King led the team in interceptions in 2019. He's not bad. He's having a bad run. He's lost something. I get it. I understand that. But if he is in the slot, 6'3" cornerback picking up a slot receiver, I like my odds there. So if Kevin King's able to go, I know he's in concussion protocol, which Matt LaFleur wasn't sure either today. I don't know if you heard his press conference. He has no idea how Kevin King got a concussion. That's also
does anybody know? Because that was actually news to me when you said that to me.
Yeah, that's a little odd. So Matt LaFleur was asked that question at his press conference today, and he wasn't sure. So if it's not Kevin King, I'm okay with Sullivan. And really, John Charles, I wouldn't mind him either. I think when you're looking at the Steelers offense, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and obviously Chase Claypool, they're really good. But how do you beat them? It's all about pressure. It's all about getting to the cornerback. If you don't have enough cornerbacks to guard those receivers, this is when the pass rush becomes pivotal. And look, we thought Jimmy G was, not a movable object. Big Ben is even bigger. So it's I think pressuring the quarterback, and I don't think it's going to matter who's guarding that third receiver as long as that pressure is consistently in Big Ben's face.
And a couple things about that. Yes, Big Ben is obviously a massive human being, and he's hard to take down. One thing that he does not have in his favor anymore is that mobility.
Yeah.
Earlier in his career, as big as he is, he was able to scramble. He was able to make plays with his feet. I would like to address this comment here by the godfather of the podcast, Papa John Alberts. Big Ben will have at least 50 pass attempts. They need to get pressure on him.
No.
Not only do they need to get pressure on him, I do think he'll have over 40. I'm going to say over 40 because I do believe they will be playing from behind for the majority of the game. And I do think they will abandon that run game quite early. The one thing that they do need to create, they do obviously need to create pressure. They need to create turnovers as well. We saw it in both the Lions game and the 49ers game, a forced fumble, recovery, and an interception. If I'm not mistaken, both of those came in the second half of each game, correct?
Yep.
That is key. And honestly, more so in the 49ers game, obviously, but those 2 turnovers are what kept that game from swinging completely in the 49ers direction. They need to create the pressure, but they also need to get Big Ben on his back foot. They need to get him throwing out of motion, and they need him to create mistakes. I would like to see a couple interceptions off of Big Ben in this game, and maybe a fumble or 2 as well. Not maybe out of Big Ben, but a fumble or 2 somewhere on that defense. I'm with you, as far as Sullivan maybe being that third back. It still scares me having that 3-headed monster in their wide receiver core. If you keep the ball out of Big Ben's hands, another thing too is going to be the run game. We've seen both weeks now, both victories. The offense did, maybe not so much in the 49ers game, but the offense did go through Aaron Jones. In the second half, he had a pretty big half in the second half against the Niners. Keep feeding him the rock. Keep opening up lanes for him to run the ball. He doesn't need to have a monster game. He just needs to have that efficient game, averaging 4.5, 5 yards per carry. bringing that safety down from that cover 2, opening up the passing lanes for Rodgers. They just need to keep the ball in a Big Ben's hand, and it should be a big game for the Packers.
This has a Rashawn Gary game written all over it. It does. You looked into week 2 when he was thrown into the starting lineup, whatever you want to call it, was Zadarius Smith going on IR after week 1. And you looked at Rashawn Gary, and he was going upfield way too much, meaning he was running past the quarterback in the pocket and then coming back. In week 3, if you watch, he's still making that same progression, but he's cutting in a lot sooner.
Yeah.
And he caused a couple pressures, and I think he was credited with half a sack as well on Jimmy Garoppolo. This just has a Rashawn Gary game kind of written all over it. And another guy who we haven't talked about, I don't think a lot of Packer fans have, because they only seemingly talk about him when he's not performing. Preston Smith was outstanding in week 3. I mean, he blew up George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk on a play. It was a pitch to the right side of the field. I mean, just blew those two up. So this is the game for them. You're at home. You don't have to worry about, crowd and, snap count, any of that other stuff. This is a game for you, those two, that I think it's going to be one of those games where we look back and we're like, dang, they had 6 sacks that game, the Packers, as a team. And it's gotta be, in my opinion, it just has to be. Big Ben's not moving out of the pocket. He's not. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't move around, very well. He can. We've seen it, in week 3. Big Ben's not going to go anywhere. He fell over his own feet.
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to mention that.
Yeah, he's a great quarterback. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. But he's just not who, he used to be. And I think there's no reason that there's not, we don't see 4, 5, 6 at least sacks going into this week.
Now, we talked about the biggest question mark on the Steelers roster. Let's talk about the biggest question marks on the Packers roster going into this game. Which Packers player scares you the most going into this game?
That's a good question. And I hate to say my question mark is the guy that I gave the stud to. I don't know. And I haven't seen enough. Yeah. Yosh played phenomenal, like pitcher perfect almost, really. I mean, when you look at who he was going up against, no false starts, 1 penalty, and no pressures or sacks out of Nick Bosa. Can he do that again to TJ Watt? If he plays, that's my concern. That's really all my concern. I think we're going to see Eric Stokes out wide as the cornerback 2, obviously opposite side of Jair. I'm not worried about the secondary. I think Darnell Savage played a heck of a game against week 3 against the Niners. I think that he continues that. We saw Devondre Campbell had a phenomenal game out of the middle linebacker. I guess I'll rephrase it. If Chris Barnes is unable to go, my concern would be Ty Summers or Oren Burks, obviously, because that's the weakness of the defense when you look at it as a whole. Obviously not having Tyler Lancaster, possibly with the COVID-19 protocols. As far as depth goes, maybe you see a lot more TJ Slayton and Jack Heflin. But it's that offensive line, because if Aaron Rodgers has the time, if they can move the ball, they can run the ball, they win games. No matter how bad the defense plays, they continue to win games. So Yosh would be my concern if TJ Watt is playing and healthy.
I honestly, I don't think there's any chance that TJ Watt doesn't play in this game.
Yeah.
My biggest concern, it's not one single individual, it's not one player, it's not even one personnel group. My biggest concern with this game is complacency. We've talked about energy multiple times on this podcast, and that's something we did not see in week 1. They did not play with energy. They did not play with any heart. I just don't want to see this Packers team get complacent, and specifically on the defensive side of the ball. I want to see Joe Barry continue to implement the strategy that he has since the beginning of the second half against the Lions. I want to see that press coverage. I want to see rushing more than 4 guys. I want to see Aaron Rodgers playing with the same rhythm that he has been playing. I want to see him playing with the same what's the word I'm looking for? Haste, maybe? I mean, wanting to make the play, wanting to get the ball in your hands. I just don't want to see this Packers team fall into a complacent state of mind after two great victories. I mean, the Lions blowout and then a great victory on the road against a very physical opponent. So I think staying becoming complacent is probably the biggest worry that I have in this game.
Yeah, and I think that, for whatever reason, I don't know, man. Matt LaFleur led teams, and obviously Aaron Rodgers has been a part of all of them. They just have these weird weeks where they just come out as flat as can be, and it doesn't make any sense. And I don't think it's really ever been at home. There's been times where they've come out, in the first quarter, maybe the first half. You could argue the Detroit game, they came out kind of slow. I don't know. It's the first, I would say non-prime time. It's kind of prime time, I guess. It's America's game of the week or whatever CBS calls it. Tony Romo and Jim Nantz on the call. So it's a prime time game, but it's not a night game or Sunday night football, Monday night football. So the crowd's going to be there. They're going to be well oiled in the Lambeau Field. I can't imagine they come out, flat, but again, they've surprised me before, and I don't know what it is, but I would imagine my thought is, week one, really, I really think it stuck them a boot up to what, because, they came out week two kind of flat in that first half and then just went off in the second half. And if the referees don't hand San Francisco 7 points, Rhino, before the half, that's probably a blowout. I mean, it probably is, 17-0 going into halftime, after a long kick return and holding them out of the end zone. You're probably looking at a 10-plus point win in San Francisco on a short week, where they've had historical struggles in that state, especially under Matt LaFleur. So I think that, Green Bay comes out full of energy. I like your dad's comment about, will A.J. Dillon live up to his hype? He's got to be given the chance. Like, he does not.
He's not getting the carries.
You can't live up to the hype if you don't have 10 plus carries or, whatever number you want to put on his carries. I mean, he gets 3 carries a game. I mean, it's not enough. So I don't know. I think you see, I honestly, I think you're seeing a different team from what we saw in week one. And I think you're seeing a team with a lot more urgency. There's a little bit of edge to Matt LaFleur. And I know him and Kyle Shanahan, that friendship's gone. There's something.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Michael Silver, NFL Network or wherever he works now, he reported on it earlier in the week. It kind of went under the rug. Nobody really talked about it. There's some bad blood there. So Matt LaFleur has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Are we seeing a little bit of an edgy Matt LaFleur? That Aaron Rodgers alluded to it on the Pat McAfee show yesterday. He said this offense is still evolving. So I think all year we're going to see a little bit of something different.
I honestly don't remember a time over the last, 2.5 years or so. I don't remember a time seeing Matt LaFleur get right in the ear of a sideline judge and scream as loud as he possibly can. I mean, he called the intentional grounding effing bullshit.
Yeah, he was mad.
Which it was.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever really seen him that fired up with an official before. So I do like the passion that he is coaching with right now. And, I've seen some people allude to the fact that maybe this passion might be a little bit fabricated to try and get Aaron Rodgers to stay in Green Bay. If that's the case, who gives a shit? If he's doing what he has to do as a head coach to keep his team together, to keep his Hall of Fame quarterback in Green Bay, kudos to him. He's doing what he has to do. He's doing what he has to do to win. So I don't want to hear that nonsense. But I do like what Matt LaFleur is doing with this team. And we talked about it in the Lions game. I would love to know how that exchange went with Joe Barry. Did he get in his face? Did he give him some attitude? Did he say, you need to cut the shit? Or was it friendly? But the fact that he is saying something to his coordinator, the fact that he is getting in there and saying, hey, look, you need to do something different, especially when Matt LaFleur is an offensive-minded coach, when he doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the defense, that's pretty big to me. So I do like this new approach that Matt LaFleur is having this season with at least his emotions.
And it goes to when we had Mike Heller on, and I asked him the question, he just doesn't get enough credit around the league.
No, he doesn't.
And we can all sit there and be like, well, you got Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Go look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers leading up until the last few years before Matt LaFleur. I'm not saying it's all Matt LaFleur. It takes two, and they definitely are a great pair. But Matt LaFleur just does not get the credit he deserves. And
Bill Belichick had Tom Brady.
Exactly. And so it takes two, it's a whole, there's three phases of football, but still the way Matt LaFleur has completely flipped Green Bay around, it sounds crazy because people are like, well, you've had, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and success and division titles and NFC championship appearances. It was pretty bad, those last few years of McCarthy. And we weren't sure where we were headed, especially with a guy that's never been a head coach before and only an offensive coordinator in Tennessee, which they had a 20 ranked offense. So we were unsure, but Matt LaFleur, I think we're seeing, I think the offseason obviously really got to him to know, that one of his personal friends was trying to poach a quarterback away from him, whether that's the story, whether that's true or not. I tend to believe it probably is because that handshake probably told you everything it needed to tell you at the end of the game. I've seen Matt LaFleur. I've seen Sean McVay lose in the playoffs and stay at midfield for more than 5 minutes talking to Matt LaFleur. So same thing with Joe Barry. I think it probably went like a friend would talk to a friend. Hey, you're effing this up. Let's fix this. Let's do this. Because look, this hire is solely on Matt LaFleur. We all know he wanted Jim Leonard. That was public as public can be. That was his number one choice. And Jim Leonard would have been a great hire. But then it fell into, okay, well, now Jim Leonard's going back to University of Wisconsin. Where do we go now? And Joe Barry was everybody's list of guys not to hire because of his, you know what I mean? So going back to his past of, Washington and Detroit led defenses, and then obviously his, knowing each other, working in LA, and this is solely on Matt LaFleur. So I think Matt LaFleur's taking, he's showing leadership. He's taking accountability. That's my guy. I hired him. He's doing something I don't agree with. I'm going to approach him. And I think the communication lines are very, very open. And I think it's a fluid situation. It's a week by week situation, but give Joe Barry, and I'm talking to myself, give Joe Barry a little bit of credit because the last 2 weeks, that defense looks way different.
And, we talk about the 7 points in the first half of the 49ers game. Even with giving up that touchdown that they shouldn't have, they still went 4 quarters and only gave up 1 touchdown.
That's really
2 quarters to end. 2 quarters to end the Lions game, and then the 2 quarters to start the 49ers game. And I don't care what anybody says. There's no argument that you could possibly make to me. There are several points the Niners put on the board in the second half that should not have been put on the board.
14 points.
And more so because of the officiating than the defense. I think the defense played a lot better than what that score indicated. We're going to move on to the prediction portion of the show before we head on out for our Week 4 matchup against the Steelers. I'm going to say the Packers strike, and they strike often. We have seen, obviously, the Steelers defense had a good game against the Buffalo Bills Week 1. They held Josh Allen in check. I would like to think that Week 1 game against the Bills was a lot like the Saints versus the Packers. No. It was an anomaly. It was an anomaly for Josh Allen. He has obviously played better since then. Bills are playing a lot better as a whole. They've given up huge games to both Derek Carr and I'm really going to forget his name out there in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow. Jesus. Both Joe Burrow and Derek Carr have had monster games against the Steelers defense. They have no secondary. I believe Derek Carr had 380 yards passing. I know Joe Burrow only attempted 18 passes, but he completed 16 of them, and he had 3 touchdowns. So I think you're going to see Aaron Rodgers pick apart this secondary, and he's going to do it all game. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say it's going to be a 37-21 game.
I hope you're right, because then we could party at Lambeau, not have to worry. The last thing I hate is going to a game. Obviously, if you go to Lambeau, you're spending a good amount of money. Really, any sporting event nowadays when they're close games, because that you can't enjoy it. I don't care. Maybe everybody's different than me. I don't enjoy, like, Sunday night. I didn't enjoy it. I did not enjoy that. It's a relief. When the game is over and I can breathe a little bit, and then my appetite comes back because I can't eat or drink during games. I sit there and I freak out. It's the same thing with the Bucks and the Brewers and the Badgers. So I hope you're right. I really do. I think it's gonna be a little bit closer. I'm kind of with your dad in the 7 to 8 point range. I think you're going to see less scoring, but I think that's okay because I think less scoring for the Packers means controlling the ball a little bit more, burning a little bit more of the clock, controlling the line of scrimmage, keeping Ben Roethlisberger and Najee Harris and the receiver trios off the field and less time to score. I'm going to go Packers 31, Pittsburgh 23. There are going to be a couple field goals kicked for both teams. The Packers team is just too good right now. Back at home, a late afternoon crowd, which is always a little bit more rowdy than the primetime games. So I think that the crowd will come into play, and I think we're going to see a couple turnovers. We could see both sides. I could see it, with Aaron Rodgers, Minkah Fitzpatrick for the Steelers. He's really good. He is good, but that's really all they have. I agree with you. The wild card is just TJ Watt. That's the wild card. If he's in that game, but again, if he's in, is he healthy? Yeah, I don't know. A groin injury doesn't heal over 1 week. So,
well, especially for a lineman. I mean, a lot of your force is on your legs. So, I mean, that could be a significant injury. I just want to throw this out there. Just a little. I'm just going to cast a reel out here. Packers are 8-2 in games that I attend in person. The only 2 losses would be that loss to the Lions. It was the first loss for the Packers against the Lions in the state of Wisconsin in 23 years. The other loss was Mike McCarthy's last game.
Arizona.
So,
let's hope that continues. That's for sure.
All right, guys, we are going to sign off for the evening. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Titletown Lounge podcast. I, of course, am Rhino. You can find me on Twitter at Sports Talk Rhino. You can find Brandon on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. And, of course, the Titletown Lounge podcast you can find at Titletown Lounge. Go, Pack, go.
Go, Pack, go. Have a good one.
There's Bledsoe. Down he goes. And there's Reggie White. And that's that hump.
Low to the shotgun. 3 receivers left, 2 to the right. Snap to Rodgers. Scrambles to his left, under pressure, rolling right. Escapes. Right side looking. Rainbows high and deep. Coming to the end zone. And it is caught. Ball caught for a touchdown. A leaping touchdown catch is made, and the Packers have won.
He is slick in the pocket. And then once he looked across the field, oh my gosh, that's from the 35. That's 60. That's close to 70 yards. But it's how high it went is what's so impressive.
Rodgers to Rodgers. 2 guys from Cal connect.
You talk about a season-saving game.